Okay, so in previous videos, we've created a simple pipeline which pulls data from S3 and creates a static source. And then we have a transform which sits on top of it, which then does some aggregation. Today, what we're going to do is just to complete this pipeline by actually writing the output of transform group into a sink. So without further ado, let's go up here, and this is where our sink is. We click on this, drop it down here. And as we've described previously, the first thing happens is the playbook component summary is populated with the information for the sink. So get a new name. So it's a sink. So start with sink. And we're going to output it to local. And we'll call it center. Okay, so as you can see, it's populated it or changed the name of the component of the sink as we've typed it in. Okay, so once again, we need to select the subtype for this output of sink. So as with source, it's either going off to a file system, which can be local or any of the cloud file systems, or it's going off to JDBC. As I said, for this particular instance, we want to go off to local, and let's go local CSV. Okay, so as soon as you select the subtype, as with all the other components, the details or the key value pairs for the playbook component details is then populated. So let's go through these and enter the bare minimum in order to get this out. Actually, I suppose the first thing we should really do now that we've dropped it is actually create a dependency. So link sync local group sensor to transgroup. So we know that actually we're going to be writing out the data which has been generated by the transgroup sensor transformation. So once again, to create a link, go up to this icon here, click on it, and then click on the components that you want linked. So now it's linked. So if we go to the dependency for the sync local group, we should see that it's now mapped to transgroup sensor, which is correct. Okay, now that's done, let's go through and enter in the information of where we want this populated. So location, where do we want this to go? And let's put it somewhere local. So if we go to, actually, let's place it. Let's go to config file. So I'm just looking for the project folder name because I can't remember it. So let's go to the project run parameters. Let's view it. So there it is. Let's copy it. So again, this is the folder for the actual data pipeline project. So I'm going to write there, but with some new column bit. Just click on that because it's going to be a bit more difficult to write in that little box. And let's create it in a folder called output. Okay, so that's done. Let's save that. Done. Partition keys. So as with all good systems which are writing out to a file, it allows us to partition the files by a partition key. In this case, let's use created date. Let's just confirm what created date looks like. Let's go to that transform. And we're going to be using created date. So let's copy that. Okay. So partition keys. By created date. Okay, so the other thing we can do is include metadata fields. So IOblend creates a number of additional metadata fields which allow us to define data lineage. So as we've seen previously with both the transform and with the source, it creates timestamps of when it was created, when it was last processed, and also the actual process of the name of the data pipeline which generated it. And for things like source, it also attaches to each individual record the file that that record has actually come from, so full data lineage. So if you want all that data lineage information, then you have to include the metadata fields. So therefore we set that to true. And because this is a CSV file and Spark, we can choose whether to have all of this information, or sorry, all of the outputs being generated into a single file, which is what we want, as opposed to partitioned by the keys. So for this instance, we'll set it to true. Okay, so that's done. And the last step is just to explore, which we've gone through previously. And as with the source, because we are using Spark to write this data out, we have to enter some Spark options. and I think at a minimum we can get away with doing separator and header. Okay, so I have made those changes. Let's save it. Okay, go back. Yeah, all my parameters are there. So let's run it. So now to recap what should happen, as we have previously seen in the other videos, it will pull data from this S3 bucket. We will then create a transform on top of it, which does a partition aggregate of the heart rate. And then finally, we'll then write that out to a local source to be processed later or to be used however we need. So let's run that. Yep, I've already saved it. So just I can ignore that warning message about saving it. And again, as previously described, the first time running the IOblend engine from IOblend Designer, it has to go through and set up the environment. But then obviously once you've executed this once, you don't need to do it again for the development of your pipeline that you're creating in this session. You can just hit reset every time you want to make a change to your data pipeline within the IOblend Designer. Okay, so okay, cool. So it's now printed the first source. Sorry, it's pulled data from S3, and yes, because I set to pause on display table to true, it's paused. So it's asked me, do I want to continue? Yes or no? So yes, I want to continue. Okay, so now it's done the transform. Now it's asking me, okay, so you've done the transform, what do you want to do? Continue, reset, or quit. So I want to continue, and hopefully it should now go on and do the output of the record to the file. And there it does. So it's saying showing new records that need writing out to your local CS file. So that's the data that's writing out. So as you can see, it's all the data plus the IOblend metadata that we've asked it to write out. And then we've asked it to print out information about stats. So it's saying the number of records which have written out is 4. And it's doing a checkpoint, which I'll explain later. Okay, so that's done, it's completed. So if I want, I can go and do the iteration again. And exactly the same thing will happen again, because this is not a streaming source. So when it goes back to pull the data from that S3 source, it'll pull all of that data again. Whereas if it was a streaming source, it would go, oh, I've already done these records. So there's nothing for me to pull until new files are added to that directory. And that's it. So it's as simple as that to create your first pipeline, which reads data from S3, does a transform on it, and then processes that data from the transform and outputs it to a local file. In the next video, we'll then add additional components, there are more sources and more transforms, and start building this up into a more complex, more realistic pipeline. I hope that helped. Thanks a lot.